Hey everyone, it's David. Welcome to SoulFish. I am really glad you're here. We really appreciate you watching, you subscribing, and making comments. It helps all of us to grow. Today is going to be for my energy sensitive friends. You know, being an empath has its own series of challenges. An intuitive, energy sensitive, highly sensitive person, whatever other label somebody else has made up that I haven't read about yet. The reality is either you're tapped in and you have some juice or you don't. The reality is either you feel other people's stuff, other things around you, or you don't. So whatever you want to call whatever that is, I'm going to call that an energy sensitive. And today, you know, as we build this community together and learn together, some questions I'm able to answer in the comments for that particular individual, and or, you know, in a private chat or whatever. Other comments though are so really great, or questions and or asked for the whole community. And so today Serene Life 3 had asked a series of questions relevant to energy sensitives that I really wanted to touch on, that I think could be super, super helpful to you. These are 4 powerful questions that I want to give you some answers to, and hopefully some of them might do something to help you feel better, do better, grow your gifts, grow your abilities, be able to thrive here in the 3rd dimension. You know, you receive these gifts out of grace. These weren't a curse to you. You were chosen to be an energy sensitive. It is a channeling. It is a flow. You don't own these gifts. They flow through you. It'd be like you taking credit for being able to sing, being Van Gogh, Liberace, whatever. Those were gifts. Now you have a responsibility to learn, and you have to earn. You have to learn and earn to wield your gifts. And so you can take something that was given to you out of grace and then develop that, like any successful person does in any endeavor, right? In this endeavor, though, this is about you being a soul, you being a spiritual being, having a physical manifestation. And so in this energy sensitive world we live in, whether you feel it or not, you're an energy body. And so your energy field carries a lot of things that are identifying you, and also how you as an energy body are interrelated with everything else around you. So I'm going to ask Nance, because I don't have the brain capacity to state these questions completely awesomely to you. So Nance is off camera, so she's going to ask some of these questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer them for you.
All right, so the first question she asked is, what are some of your most effective practices for being in the world without being overwhelmed by society, news, family, friends, responsibilities, and empathic, psychic overwhelm?
Wow.
That's a big one.
That is the biggie, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So let's break that down just a little bit. Most of what she asked, right, Nance, is really kind of an outside perspective. Is that right? So most of the things that she asked, news, are really outside stimulus. Is it correct?
Well, she wants to know, like, what practices you use to not be overwhelmed by those outside things.
Right. So, but the first thing is, these are really outside influences, right? So the reason I'm breaking it down like that for you is you have you, and who and what you are and how you feel, and what your energy signature, let's say, which is your baseline. So if I were to take Nance as an energy sensitive, and she was clear on her and had worked out some of her stuff where she knew that this was her space. In other words, I can view her energy body and see her bubble, right? And know that this is her. She's got her own baggage that she has to work out, that we all have. So that's over here. I want to address that in just a second. Then you have outside stimulus. Now, outside stimulus can be things that you choose, like news, what you're consuming. So that could be any sort of content that you're bringing into you, any sort of people that you're bringing into your sphere, any sort of food, any sort of activities. All of that, to me, are the outside influences that are affecting you. So the first thing I think that is key to this whole question is there's a time when you have to make a decision that you're not going to be a victim anymore of what you're feeling. And there's a moment in that. You know, change happens in a flash. In other words, it may take you a year to get to the moment of change, but the actual moment of change when you stop being this and become that is a snap, is right then. The light is either comes on or it goes off, right? It may took you some time to get to that decision, or took you that time to be able to make that change, but the change happens immediately. So the first thing I have to say is that you have to start believing that you have value and that you're not broken, that you weren't screwed up from the beginning, and this is, you know, a way to label it in some positive manner, that you actually are tapped in, that you do receive information that is outside of you. So the first thing is believing it, that there is something different about you than everyone else. And the next thing is controlling what you consume. So if you're not working on you, let me take a step back. If energy is a river and we're all walking through this river together, you are in a flow. You cannot escape that flow. There is no shielding that's going to help you. So I did a video a while ago, which we'll link somewhere up here in a card or something, that was about why shielding doesn't work. You can't walk into a river of flow and act like that you're going to dam it up with yourself. You know, I'm not going to feel this water coming at me. I'm not going to feel this energy coming at me. My magic dolphins and 45 crystals are going to protect me from whatever's around me. That's bullshit. So I'm just telling you now, it's bullshit. If you hear that story, that's bullshit. The reason I get angry about the shielding part is because first, when, you know, I'm going back now 10 years. So 10 years ago, nobody was talking about empaths. 10 years ago, when I realized that something was very different and that I had to get to the bottom of it, you know, there wasn't channels like this online that I could peel up. I was reading and hiring mentors and teachers and trying to find out who had real experiential knowledge, who actually had some juice, instead of just reading something and regurgitating it at me. I know this is a roundabout, just bear with me. I'm coming back to where we are with how do you stay up. Well, the first way to stay up is you have to remove the rings in you. So if energy is this flow of a river, and you stop the shielding stupidity, and you actually think of yourself as integrated as part of that river, in other words, as an element that is flowing through, then you want to be like cheesecloth. You want it to go through you. You're trying not to hold on to stuff.
It's the resistance thing.
Resistance
creates more pain.
Yes.
You have to let it flow through you, and then the pain will minimize. It's hard to let it go. But
yes. And as you work on your rings, which are the internal things, your personal baggage, the hurts that you have. So let's look at it this way. In the river, there's -1 to -10. -10 is awful, and then 0 to +10, right? So you have everything in the river that you could ever feel that you're walking through. And if you have a -2 in you from something that happened when you were 7 years old, then everything in that river that's -2 based will come and attach to you. And you have to work through that. And if you don't, first of all, work on you to get rid of that -2 in you, whatever that issue was. And I mean dispel it, not put it in a comfortable place in the shelf in the back room. I mean dispel it. Dispel it means that it doesn't, when you think of a particular issue, it doesn't bring up a positive charge in you or a negative charge in you. So a comment has been made like that's neutrality. Not really. It's not so much neutrality for me, it's transmutation. It's working both sides of your energy columns, your contracting side and your expansion side. It's transmutation. You have to walk. If you look at this is the tree of life here depicted, these two things. You have to walk the middle path. You have to take stuff from this side, and you have to take stuff from this side, transmute it, and walk the middle path. So when you are feeling all of this stimulus, Here are some specific techniques. 1, start to cut out certain aspects of that stimulus. Do it for a week. Write it down. Don't write a book. I'm not asking you to be Eudora Welty. I'm saying write it down in clips, little bullet points, and measure it. I removed Facebook. I stopped eating ice cream, meaning sugar, because sugar is really bad for empaths, okay? I stopped doing this. I stopped doing that. I did these 4 things, and I stopped on Sunday, and then when I reevaluate on the next Monday, a week later, how have you changed? Do you feel better? Can you say, oh, well, this really helped to lift me? Because here's the key. If you were a 1, let's say, and you remove these 4 items over the last week, and you were able to kind of maintain a 2, you've proven to yourself that you have control over your own feelings, over your own energy, in a very small way. But that's proof to you that you can affect a positive change. So the first thing is believing that you're special, and that because of that, you have certain needs and requirements that you're going to have to address. That doesn't mean you're broken. It just means that you have special needs and requirements. The second thing is you perpetually have to be removing the rings in you so that as you walk through this river of energy flow, you're not attached, you're not being attached to, you're not attracting all of the negative 2s that you had left in you. Here's what's cool about that. As you clean up the rings in you, then you're still going to be able to sense and feel, but there is no charge. That's what's awesome about it. It becomes pure information to you. So imagine this. Imagine you're in an elevator. Here's the reason why you have these gifts, okay? Imagine you're in the elevator and you're sensing the cat next to you, and he's not feeling great, and he's really down. And somehow through, you're told to say something to that person. Do you understand that you knew exactly where he was? You were shown exactly where he was in that moment. And you didn't have to live the 30 years that that person did to put him in that moment. You knew. You were able to skip all of the 30 years, but feel it somehow and know this kind of transition took place, right? And that he's here in this moment. And you hear that, and then you're able to say something that changes something for that person. Because remember, if you change yourself, everything around you changes. So if I can maintain, if you looked at yourself like a 0 to 10, right? 0, nothing, let's say 1. 1 is awful. And let's just say 10 is you bend space and time, okay? So if you're in this place and I'm at a 5, and I'm able to maintain a 5, then all of these 3s, 2s, 1s can't exist in my space. Because energetically, it's not in the same place. They're here. I'm here. What's cool about this is life is a pendulum. You know, there are 7 natural laws that this is some Hermetic teachings, but there are 7 natural laws that you need to study, and we'll talk about that in the future. And that's how this place works. One of those is kind of a pendulum effect, where there is a point where you reach your high point, and then you will swing back and reach your low point. Remember, we live in a balance. If you maintain a 5, then your low point is much higher, if that makes sense, because then you would be swinging up to 7, let's say. Your average out of 5, you swing up to a 7, and you swing down to a 3, let's say, right? That beats the hell out of you being a 2, and you're in negative land down here when you hit your lows. And that's why so many people are like this. And I work with people in that way to help even out that process. So when the world seems to be self-destructing, you have to ask yourself, particularly, I work with a lot of people who are very frustrated with politics over the last couple of years. Me personally, I don't care. Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or Independent have done nothing for me in my 50 years to make my personal life better. It is a material thing to be focused on that. You are a spiritual being having a material experience. So you focusing in on kind of this propagandized, divisive content doesn't make you feel any better, and sure as heck doesn't keep you at a 5. So the third thing is controlling what you're consuming. So belief, first of all, that you need to, that you're special and unique, and you need to honor that. Second thing is removing your rings so that you don't attract and pick up like a pull filter all the crap that's around you. And the third thing is divesting yourself from all types of content, consumption, and I'm going to say stimulus that isn't beneficial to you. Let me give you a real example. And this may mean that you have to change the way you feel or work about certain things. So here's a real example. You know, if you go on a trip and you go to a hotel, one of those big chains, and you're in a room surrounded by 400 other rooms, you're not going to walk out of there without having been immersed in the lives of 400 other people, because you are consolidated, right? You are right there. You might have to Airbnb it if you go on a trip so that you have some space and that you're not sucking everything around you clean. So that may shift, you know, how you think about things or some of the activities that you can do. Nance would love to go to a concert with me. Me in a concert, even if it's a mellow one, if I'm around that many people, man, I will vibrate out of my skin. I will lift the stadium off its foundation and send it into space. I can't do that. So would I love to go hear so-and-so? Heck yeah, man. I grew up with that. I would love to hear that and see them before they retire or whatever. But guess what? That's not an experience for me. And I'm okay with that. So I'm throwing this at you to say there are certain things that you're going to have to recognize. You're going to have to say yes to these things and act upon it. But when you say yes to these things and act upon those things, you are saying no to these things automatically. Okay, so what's...
Next question.
Yeah, I know this is... Strap in.
Some of these you kind of covered, but you can reiterate. So it says, when you realized you weren't broken, how did you confidently move forward to feel stable in your spiritual self?
Wow. Well, when I realized I wasn't broken, I can tell you this. I sure as hell didn't move confidently doing anything at that moment. And that may be your situation too. I wasn't confident at that moment. Confidence is a product word. Confidence happens when, you know, a lot of activity, you have experiential knowledge, you have intellectual knowledge, you have a lot of things that all come together, and that's what, and you have success from it, right? You've measured it, you've said, if I do A, this is successful, if I do B, it's not, right? So you've measured these things, and that gives you confidence because you have understanding, real life understanding, right? So at that moment, you're not going to be confident because at that moment, you are actually, the reason I realized I wasn't broken is because I realized that A, you know, it's a process of elimination. If you're feeling certain ways and then you remove them and you measure that, you start to realize that, hey man, these things weren't mine at all. And yet they were impacting me so negatively because your brain, remember, takes in the stimulus, your body takes in the stimulus, and your brain is of this place. So your brain then says, oh, well, if you're feeling it, you have to do something to fix it. And that's the mistake. So first of all, this goes back to you saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm not normal. I have extra sensory perception. You know, at 18, you had 18 years to learn how to use your eyes. You know, you could smell, see, talk, run, jump. Your whole body, like you knew how to use all your senses. Like that's the culmination of that. And then you have this extra sensory perception, and we're not taught to develop that. And that gets in the mix, and then you say, well, why is this so bad for me? Well, because you never learned. You learned these 5 senses, but you didn't learn your other 5 senses that you now recognize you have. And you have to integrate them into this experience. And there's a lot of obstacles with that. But when you remove your rings and you remove the things that hold you back, toxic people, toxic content, toxic activity, bad thinking, everything shifts. And that's how you build confidence. It's not confidence is over time. Confidence is not a light switch.
Next one.
Yeah.
How do we become our fullest and know it? Fullest, that's kind of an interesting word.
That's a great word.
For everyone.
To me, becoming your fullest is about you recognizing your space. So as an energy sensitive, the biggest challenge for us is getting to the moment where you feel just you. And I work with a lot of people to move them into this space. And the fullness comes to me in moments when you're in your space and you feel only you, and in that moment you really get a sense of how really wonderful you are. I know that sounds kind of new agey, cheesy sometimes about loving yourself, but it's the
special, not broken moment.
Yeah, because you realize that, hey, wait a minute. When you get to just you realize, hey, wait a minute. I'm not as bad as all I used to think I was. Because keep in mind, you think you're bad because you're feeling all this other stuff from everyone and everything else. Some of it is controlled, like I said, propaganda or like EMFs or things like that that you're sensing in that help to suppress you on purpose. But think about that. If you're able to feel you, what would you feel like? I mean, have you been there? If you could just feel you and not everything else, wouldn't that give you a moment to say, wow? So that's your fullest moment. And, I have to stress this to you. This is a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. You're a work in progress. I don't know that we reach a pinnacle of fullest moment time. I think as we work on our gifts, as we remove our rings, as we become deeper into this flow and start to live from that place instead of this third dimensional ego place where we try to then take what we've been given and then do something with it. Like I'm somehow gonna game the universe because I have these extra sensory perception. It comes into me and now I'm gonna somehow put myself in the way and go do this. That's what you're trying to avoid.
I think it's also not trying to fit in.
That's the hard thing.
Most people that have gifts try to understand why the things that excite most people don't excite them. And it's this lifetime of feeling like you just don't get it. And you try to
Or what you're missing, right?
Yeah,
like you're missing
to fit
something.
And you try to make it like so you could be, quote, normal and not broken.
Right.
And I think the fullest moment for me was recognizing that I don't care if I fit. I don't want to fit. I like being different. I like being special. And I surround myself with people who embrace that in me. Mm-hmm. And if I can't find those people, then I just am happy with me.
And happy tapping in, right?
Right, exactly. I would rather have my gifts than not have them and be normal. I'd rather, be, quote, broken. I don't see myself as broken at all. I see myself as amazingly special. So.
I do too, Nancy.
And you should too.
I do too, Nancy. I think you're amazingly special.
All right, so you ready for the next question?
Yes.
Final question. Was there something in the very beginning of your understanding that was pivotal to your confidence in daily living with this power?
There was something pivotal. I don't know if that I've shared this with too many people. So, my mom was an empath and a powerful one. She had a lot of power. Now, I can say this today, she's passed, but when she was here and before I understood my gifts 10 years ago, I didn't know that she was an empath. I didn't know. I mean, we had a connection. We could feel stuff. We had these conversations. But again, 10 years ago, nobody was talking about being an empath. And I just didn't know what was involved. So that was pivotal for me because my mom, without understanding, and again, no internet, right? She didn't have an easy means to research. There weren't people talking to her about, hey, are you feeling like this? Maybe you ought to consider, this. There was none of that. It was just all reading. It was all kind of third party, find a teacher, find a mentor, try these things, whatever. So my mom spent, easily, her whole life, but for her last 20 or so years in a really miserable state where it was just had stacked on her to a point. And I got to be honest, for me, we talked a lot about opposing force, right? That things that happen to you, good and bad sometimes, the good things you want to do more of, right? And the bad things you say, well, I'm never going to do that again. So as an opposing force, it steers you, it pushes you in this direction. Well, Mom, for me, pushed me in this direction because I was, I was already there. And And I knew I wasn't mental, I knew I wasn't chemical, I knew all those things. And yet I still was feeling awful, just awful, and overwhelmed. And I mean, it was becoming harder and harder for me to function in a daily world. And I saw my mom basically just cut off and spend the last 20 years of her life, kind of giving up, just kind of waiting her time to go, in a very kind of miserable condition. And I just said, there's just no way in hell I'm going to be that guy. And so I went to work. And I knew somehow that if I could fix me, then I would be able to help show my children, who are powerful energy sensitives, what they could do, that they wouldn't have years of miserable existence, that they could start training now in the way that they could handle it and learn to use their gifts like we would have been 1,000 years ago. Thousands of years ago, we would have been plucked and trained. So that was my attempt. And 10 years later, here we are, and reaching out and building this community, because to me, this information needs to be understood, needs to be known, needs to be taught. This stuff goes back thousands and thousands of years, and we just don't get exposed to it today. And so that was the objective with this enterprise, with SoulFish, and in our outreach in these videos and in our sessions and programs that we offer, is to help everyone understand how this doesn't have to be a world of suffering, and that it's up to us, that if we fix us, everything gets lifted. And that's a beautiful thing, so that we can lift together, we can lift this place out of some suffering. This has been a really long video. I apologize for the technical difficulties. And I hope this has been really helpful. And thank you, Serene Life 3, for your wonderful comments and participation here in our community. And thank you very much for your questions. Until next time.